I Hate the News is the weekly news analysis from I Hate Politics podcast, a show about a human activity we love to hate. I am Sunil Dasgupta. The week of March 26th, 2024. Maryland Democrats are divided over when and how to raise new revenues to balance the structural deficit in the state budget. 4 school communities thrown off the Title I schools list now push back. And do you remember the month of March 4 years ago? Music for this episode comes from Baltimore area jazz musician Seth Kibel's album Clarinet Flex and Chill. Kibel on clarinet, flute, and tenor saxophone. Ellington Carthan on piano and keys. Christy McDonald on electric guitar. Elliot Seppa on double bass. And Joey Antico on drums. You can find their music at sethkibel.com. The Maryland General Assembly meets for 90 days each year, January to April. It now has 2 weeks left in the 2024 session and one very big question left to answer. Will the state pass new measures to shore up falling revenue estimates? Maryland Governor Wes Moore and the state Senate leadership have said no new taxes. But in the House of Delegates, there seems to be greater appetite for finding new revenue sources. Democratic Majority Leader David Moon believes that the governor's and the Senate leadership's no new taxes mantra does not include fees.
The House has delivered a budget plan that, for the most part, adheres to what both the governor and the Senate president have said. No new taxes, but maybe fees. So if you look at the transportation plan and the education plan, for that matter, both of them are primarily composed of items that are not new taxes. I mean, we can argue the semantics of it, but the transportation package is mostly a bunch of fees, and there's one tax in there, the vehicle excise tax. And on education, what you're talking about is closing a tax loophole and creating a new market to tax. Right, but it's voluntary. People don't have to enter into iGaming, and your average Maryland resident is not someone who's paying a combined reporting.
Combined reporting applies to companies that use subsidiaries to move profits to the most favorable jurisdiction.
We are facing multi-billion-dollar deficits. So that fundamentally is what the heart of this legislative session is about, and whether we should start dealing with that now or do as others would like to do and kick the can down the road when we know that doing so puts us in an even bigger hole with less cash reserves. I think folks were in a very different place 6 or 8 months ago, long before the session started, and we had a lot of hardline proclamations about no new revenues of any kind. And then the transportation cuts were announced, and there was widespread alarm from every corner of the state. And suddenly we saw a restoration. The governor, he has said time and again that he has a very high bar. We believe that high bar has been met. We had a $250 million revenue write-down in the middle of session, not to mention other administrative errors and things like that were caught where we need to make up another couple $100 million. We are hoping that our Democratic partners in government are going to be willing to sit down and talk about a timeline that doesn't put us worse off than need be. If our partners in government would like to propose an alternate revenue measure that is, again, not a broad tax on the residents, I urge them to come forward with an alternate solution.
There you have it. The Maryland House of Delegates Majority Leader David Moon laying out where the state budget is stuck between the two chambers and the governor's house, all in Democratic hands. The Maryland Senate passed a revenge porn bill that allows civil and criminal penalties for non-consensual use of sexual images. Violators would be guilty of a misdemeanor that will lead to jail time of up to 2 years and $5,000 in fines. The bill also allows victims to sue perpetrators in civil court without having to make the images publicly available. The bill now must pass the House before going to the governor. Title I is the designation given to schools that have a large number of students from poor families. Once designated, these schools receive money from the federal government. But school districts can determine which schools get the money by setting the standard of poverty. This year, MCPS, Montgomery County Public Schools, decided to change the poverty measurement from free and reduced meals to those eligible for the federal SNAP, the food stamps program. The advantage is that families are now automatically counted based on their SNAP eligibility, but it has also excluded students from undocumented families who are not eligible for SNAP. And this has changed the numbers such that 4 local schools are no longer considered to be Title I. This has left school communities upset. At Veers Mill Elementary School last week, 4th and 5th graders staged a walkout. Danielle Ring is the PTA president at Belpre Strathmore Elementary Schools, which are co-located in Aspen Hill in Mid-County.
Our numbers dropped from last year, which I think were around 65 or 66%. We dropped like 10 percentage points. And our demographic has not changed that much. What that impact looks like on the community that's built, on the students, on the teachers, and everything else when a school loses that kind of money. $400,000 for us, I think I looked, is like 6 or 7% of our annual budget. That's a big hit. Title I places restrictions on class sizes. So we're going to have students coming out of environments where they've been well supported in smaller class sizes and coming into classes that are much larger. The removal of a lot of the academic intervention programs that we were able to implement, the removal of our restorative justice program that was taking place in school, and the reduction of a number of additional after-school activities that engaged the parent community, so math nights, curriculum nights, plus not being a Title I school means that we no longer have the ELO, the Enriched Learning Opportunities Summer Program, which many of our parents were counting on. So there's a definite impact on our families. And additionally, the timing of the announcement was after most of the lower cost programs for summer that are offered by Parks and Rec were at capacity. So it meant that many of our parents who were counting on that program as an opportunity for their students don't have another option. Historically, when a school has come off of the farms, come off of the Title I list, MCPS has provided some additional supports. They've been qualified as a focus school, and some additional supports were brought in to kind of cushion the difference between that $400,000. And so it didn't go from $400,000 to nothing. And none of that was on offer this year when we got the news. So there were a lot of questions being asked by the Board of Education to the Title I folks to better understand the process. The Title I office has been meeting with the principals of all of the schools and putting together some talking points to better communicate what the process is and how this happened. The other thing that has happened is that MCPS has met with all 4 principals as a group, but also individually. And I know for our school, some supports are being offered. So our school is being named a focus school. So there'll be additional support there. They're going to be providing a summer program for a limited number of students. In our school's case, it's 60 students. And then at least for the 24-25 school year, there will be the academic interventions that we're losing during the school day will be provided after school.
That's Danielle Ring, PTA president at Belpre Strathmore Elementary Schools. Apart from Wears Mill and Strathmore, the two other affected elementary schools are Brookhaven and Oakview. Do you recall what you were doing 4 years ago? Yes, 4 years, almost half a decade, was when the pandemic started and the country was shut down. Travis Gales, Montgomery County's chief health officer, faced tremendous criticism for locking down the county and eventually quit his job, which remained open for almost 2 years before Kisha Davis stepped in to become the county's new chief health officer. I asked her for a status update.
The CDC has just put out new guidance that says basically treat COVID like a respiratory illness, like we think about flu and RSV. And in some ways, that's a celebration of where we've come in COVID advancements. And I think for some, it's but wait, you spent 4 years telling me that COVID was awful, I should never get it and never do anything. And now you're telling me it's okay, just go out.
How should people deal with that cognitive dissonance?
The tools we have in our toolbox for COVID are so different than what we had 4 years ago. We didn't even have a test for it. We didn't have masks. We didn't know if they worked or not. And so we have so many things now, the treatments that we have, Paxlovid. Remember when there was UV light and drink bleach and, all of this nonsense that we didn't even know how to treatment. Now we have really, really good medicines. We've got vaccines, and Montgomery County has done a fabulous job, or at least we did. First time around, did a fabulous job with vaccines, which I think is why our rates in the county are so good.
I want to ask about that. The vaccination rate was so high in the beginning, and then it just totally fell off.
I think we here are subject to what a lot of the country is going through of just vaccine fatigue. We got like 70, 80, and some communities even up to 90% vaccination rates. And now we're, humming around 25%. Nationally, we're seeing around 20%. Here's my plug for vaccines. When you look at COVID rates, who's dying and who's in the hospital, 95% of the folks who are hospitalized or dying from COVID don't have the latest booster. And so we know that vaccines are still really, really effective.
What about the actual COVID incidence now?
Data report from last week, our average percent positivity was about 4.5%. That's kind of middle of the road compared to some other counties. I'll say these, percent positivity rates are hard to really trust because people aren't testing like they were before. What I will say is when we look at wastewater data, so we can check for COVID in wastewater, and that gives us a pretty good snapshot, and that consistently has been down.
Is the county still supplying test kits?
So we do still have test kits that we make available. We get those from the state, and so we just had a big distribution that I think went out this week. I think we're good on kits probably until early summer.
No more expectation as well that somebody that gets COVID is going to quarantine, right?
If you feel sick, stay home. You can take the COVID test kit. That'll give you some guidance on whether you should need Paxlovid or other things. But if you feel sick, still stay home. If it's the flu, stay home. If it's RSV, stay home. If it's the common cold, stay home. And that really makes a difference in terms of reducing spread.
Those without insurance getting COVID, what is the chance that they might be able to get Paxlovid at a health clinic?
So there are some programs, some test to treat programs where you can get Paxlovid for free. And I will send you the link after that you can put up. There's also through our some of our community clinics where folks who don't have insurance can go to be treated, and they have sliding fee scales for folks to be able to access that medication and treatment.
Kisha Davis, Montgomery County Chief Health Officer, thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
That's all for this episode. Be sure to tune in here at I Hate Politics this Friday for our big feature interview. I Hate Politics is produced by me, Sunil Dasgupta, and assistant producers Daniel Gallio, Katarina Gasek, and Catherine Amaya Escobar, with support from University of Maryland, Baltimore County. I direct UMBC's political science program at the universities at Shady Grove in Montgomery County, where, among other things, we explore and learn about politics, government, and society close to home. Music for this episode comes from Baltimore area jazz musician Seth Kibel. The songs are from his album Clarinet Flicks and Chill. If you want to share your music on the show or know someone else who might want to, please email us at producer@ihbpod.org. See you next time.